Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and it's time for this week's matchups episode. In this episode, we look at the defense. Joining me, as always, is my friend and co-host Frazer Tafar. Frazer, how you doing?
Doing good, Ken. Glad to be back on for the defensive show. Uh, really good stretch we have going so far. Obviously, it was a tough game against Cleveland, really led by the defense and their performance. Really, I want to see that continue, and let's see an even dominant performance against the Jets team, who has now a change at quarterback.
Yeah, interesting change, obviously coming up because Tyrod Taylor been in the league forever. Really never played for the Ravens during his time here, but he's played a lot since in Buffalo, where he got most of his time, and then as a backup quarterback for years, and certainly could be one of the guys we saw on the backup quarterback commercials. But
Yeah.
Tyler Huntley, I think, has the funniest one of those.
Yeah, it's good to see that Tyler's getting the publicity. I mean, he fits the Ravens' need at backup to the T because he does a lot what Lamar has done, and then really they've gone back and forth since high school. So it makes sense that he's able to do the same things that he can. So it's good in that perspective. All right. So moving on to this week's matchups, I have the Ravens defense versus the Jets scripted plays. I think the only weakness that I've seen from this team is once we start the game, first quarter, and the team has a script on what they want to do against the team and how we want to attack the coverages that they show, their tendencies. The Ravens tend to get exploited, especially in the beginning. They give up touchdowns, field goal drives. Recently, they've been able to hold them to three a lot, but usually when teams do have success, it's in the first half, first quarter. So I think if we're able to stop the Jets getting into a rhythm, they have a capable quarterback now. So Tyrod is going to be looking at his progressions, one, two, dump off, or if he sees his first read, he's going to hit it. He's not going to hesitate like Fields and pull it down and run because he's kind of older now. So that's not his first thing is to run. So I think Tyrod is going to pose a threat at the veteran presence. He doesn't have the arm talent that you want at the quarterback position. So I think if we're able to stop them in their scripted plays, then we can have success over the game.
All right. Well, they certainly will have some installs. I'm going to go first with the inside linebackers versus Tyrod Taylor because I think that's um, uh, maybe one of the big matchups and one you don't necessarily think about. But let's go over Tyrod Taylor's career a little bit. He had 4 years in Baltimore, never started a game, never threw a TD pass for the Ravens, by the way. But he's now in his 15th NFL season. He moved to Buffalo, had 3 very good seasons with them, started 39 games since for 5 teams in the last 8 seasons. So he's really been around the block. He's not Josh Johnson in terms of playing in 4 different leagues and 15 different cities and this and that, but he's played a lot of. He's played around. He's been around. He still has success running the ball even in recent years. So he's got 5.6 yards per carry over 421 career carries. So he's got basically a season and a third of Derrick Henry-esque production in over 15 years at quarterback, and very effective in terms of his running the ball. And that's been true in recent years as well, too, by the way. He's still maintained a high average, even though he probably is, as you say, running a little bit less than he used to. But that said, he's still a quarterback who needs to be contained and then moved off the spot. I think
Yep.
the Star Wars trash compactor kind of a method of going after him is a good one in terms of you keep him in the pocket, he gets a little more antsy, and then you make sure you have him contained with either spy or good rush lanes, and that really reduces his effectiveness. He's been much less careful with the football in recent years. And he's been a guy who's thrown some interceptions, 17 touchdowns and 11 interceptions since 2021. Remember, we're not talking about a guy who's played a ton of games during that time. So denied passing lanes as best able. Height gives him trouble. He's barely over 6 feet tall. So the Ravens having Brent Urban and others in there on the defensive line Travis Jones, who can get their hands up, it gives a quarterback like Tyrod Taylor some significant difficulties. And that includes Hamilton as the weak side linebacker in the dime. Hamilton is a looming presence with those long arms. And, he's the new Stork in a lot of ways. He's the new Ted Hendricks in this game. Boy, does he do a lot of similar things in terms of being a presence in coverage as a pass rusher, almost playing as a defensive lineman at times. But I think he can give Terod trouble, and hopefully the inside linebackers will make fewer read errors against him and be able to be in the right position, pass or run, to deal with what he presents.
Yeah, and I think to your point about Hamilton, I mean, he's been playing all pro, almost defensive player of the year level if Miles Garrett didn't exist when he's getting 4 or 5 sacks a game. Uh, but his height advantage does pose a threat. I mean, recently we've been going against quarterbacks who aren't really as tall, like you mentioned. Shador was probably the tallest quarterback we faced in what, 3 weeks in Stafford, maybe, right?
I didn't think of it that way, but I'd have to go back over it in my mind here.
Fair. But I expect a really good game from Teddy Buchanan. I mean, he's for a rookie, he's came on strong all year. I think we know where the Jets are at and their point on the offense. So I think he could take advantage of that and really have a real coming out party. Because he was able to have starting opportunity earlier in the year, but now that he's with Roquan and the defense has definitely settled down, I think this is a game where both of them can excel. But I want to see Buchanan's speed show up in this game for sure.
All right. Well, that's reasonable. And he'll be an important player on early downs, and Hamilton, of course, an important player still at that will spot when the Ravens play their dime, which was absolutely um, shut down against the Browns. And part of that was the play of Keon Martin as well,
Yep.
but they presumably will not have that this week. He hasn't practiced yet with that DNP twice with the rib injury.
Yeah, weird situation with that. Moving on to my next point, I have the Ravens defense versus Brees Hall. He's essentially their main threat on offense. The offense runs through him, so stopping the run, getting pressure up front with Travis Jones, um, Urban, and all the defensive guys that we have up front, just making sure we get a good push on this weak offensive line, and then continuing to see the presence of Roquan and Buchanan on the run fills, and then on top of that, Hamilton on the run fills. I mean, he had one run fill, I think it was like on a second down. I mean, he blew up a NFL guard. It was like
Yep.
I, that was I got up out my seat after that one because that was impressive. Because you don't we haven't seen that in a while. Roquan does that occasionally, but for him to just hit the hole with no hesitation like that, I think that's flashes of old Ravens football that I like to see. Um, go ahead.
But they had certainly had no answer for him. That's absolutely true. And one of the things that bothers me about the Ravens' run defense versus Hall's, I think they've got the bodies necessary to reduce inside movement and reduce the opportunity for the Jets' inside interior offensive linemen to climb and take out the linebackers and get them caught in the wash. But I worry about their edge defenders. And in particular, the Ravens had to go to David Ajabo for a high percentage of the first down snaps this last week because they really didn't have anybody else. And they still don't. I mean, Carl Lawson is not a good replacement for Ajabo because he's a situational pass rusher. And they have other guys who are already in that position. So the team desperately needs Tavius Robinson back,
Yeah,
just
it's bad.
absolutely desperately. And until then, they're going to have to be patching the shit together and covering up with duct tape and bubble gum as much as they can. And most of that means Brent Urban is playing a fair amount of uncovered nickel snaps, which means you really almost have to have two players playing outside linebacker there. He effectively is the edge. You consider it a nickel with one outside linebacker and three defensive linemen.
Yep.
But then they also have to have another quick player they put on the outside, and that can sometimes be Buchanan, it can sometimes be Hamilton. But either anyway, you're making additional sacrifices to try and contain the run. I think it'll be worth it this week because I think the Jets absolutely will try and have to figure out how can they get as many touches as possible from Brees Hall. It's not like they've shied away from that at all, but with Garrett Wilson out,
Yeah,
that's a very
this
significant
is it.
loss. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the way we've attacked the run game ever since it's been exploited in the beginning of the season, I loved it. I love how we're doing it now. I think we're being practical, just throwing the bodies in there. If we're gonna get ran on, they have to stop us with these three tackles up front, and then our edge defenders. If you can't do that, then you're gonna have a long day. So I like how we've approached it because with Matabike, we've traditionally just went two tackles with him and Travis Jones traditionally, and then they can hold up the guards just enough for the linebackers to go fill. But it's not the case this year, and I love the adjustment that we have.
All right, let's move forward. My last point in the defense is Humphrey and Hamilton versus John Mechie. Now, John Mechie's not a big name in the NFL, and played obviously for the Texans, and people probably remember him there. But he was with the Eagles at the start of this year. Only had 4 targets in his time with the Eagles, but then he was acquired at or near the trade deadline by the Jets. And the Jets have used him as a very significant part of their offense. Played a lot more snaps. He had 4 targets in 2 games. Caught 3 of 3 for 45 this last week. So they've gone to him as one of their passing options. Remember, the Jets with Fields are a team that does not throw the ball very often at all. I mean,
Right.
so when somebody has 4 targets over 2 weeks, it's actually a lot.
Right.
And he really became a focal point of that Jets offense in a lot. He's used mostly from the slot, not exclusively, but mostly from the slot. And this is a matchup that probably is a little bit more difficult than others for Kyle Hamilton if they're in big nickel. So that'll be something the Ravens will need to work on. More than that, since the Ravens like to blitz off the slot, Mechie will become the hot read very often. And Tyrod Taylor, that's something he's got to learn to live with and be able to get that ball out quickly. They also, they can beat bad inside linebacker reads with quick passes to Mechie if the play action that Tyrod and the Jets throw through Breece Hall is effective. So that's something that I think could be a problem. And Mechie is a guy who has some ability to stretch the field vertically as well. Not a huge deep threat, but he has some speed to do that. So with Garrett Wilson out, he's probably the Jets' most dangerous receiving weapon. I'm excluding Hall from that, but he's probably the most dangerous receiving weapon they have.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I think the way you can neutralize him is just being physical. And I think Hamilton up front with him is definitely going to be an issue, him getting off the line. I see your point to where he would have issues, especially if they're in man, if they're in big
Mhm.
nickel. But I do anticipate them playing a zone if that is the situation, just so they can beat him up a little bit before he gets to the stem of his route.
Yeah. All right. Always great doing the show with you, Frazer. Interesting stuff every week. Can you tell folks where they can talk football with you online?
Yep, you guys can reach me at Twitter/X at F_Rave8. That's F_RAVE8.
All right. Other folks out there, thanks so much for all the effort you put in, all the loyalty you have to this show and the effort in terms of sending questions to #FilmStudy mailbag. I want to do more of that. And I may have a few that I'll try and address in a video. So particularly if you have a video you'd like me to do to explain something, I want to lean into that. Hit me up with your idea for that, and I'll try and do something I can hopefully do in a 2 or 3 minute video, and then we could refer it to a pod for further detail. For Frazier Tapar, this is Ken McKusick saying goodbye. We'll talk to you next time on Matchups.